I'm going to start with Bernie Sanders because I think what we're seeing is an unprecedented media attack like 2 years before the actual election. Every time I look up, there's another Bernie Sanders hit piece out there. It's the Washington Post, it's Politico, it's the New York Times. I mean, it's insane. You literally cannot go 2 days without a Bernie Sanders hit piece. So some people say that's good. That means the establishment scares him, is scared by him. I agree to a certain extent that it's good that the establishment is scared by him. But on the other end, he hasn't even announced his run for the presidency yet. He hasn't announced any plans yet. And between Politico and the Washington Post, I tweeted a joke the other day. They should just merge. They should just merge. And the new slogan, the Washington Post slogan now is democracy dies in the darkness. You should change it to democracy dies in Bernie Sanders' wrinkled suit. It's insane. It's insane. So, I monitor these attacks because I think it's important that they did this in 2016. They distorted his record. They distorted his plans. You had Anderson Cooper accusing him of being basically a communist because he said good things about Fidel Castro once upon a time. Obviously, Washington Post with the 16 negative stories. But it's important that we get out these attacks so they could be corrected. And also so we could get to the swing voters out there who might be interested in Bernie's policies but might be spooked by these corporate smear merchants what the truth is about Bernie Sanders. So this story, I've honestly never seen a story so ridiculous as far as smears against Bernie Sanders than this one. Here we go. And let me know if the buffering is any better. So Politico puts up a piece basically saying Bernie 2016 alums are wary of him running again. Basically they're making it seem like, top people, a large contingent of his former staff is looking for other candidates to carry the torch. So, that would kind of be interesting if that were actually true. It would be interesting if so many of his staff were not exactly inspired at the thought of him running again. I would want to know why that is. Of course, people talk about his age, but it would be kind of a big deal if leading progressives that worked for his campaign or were surrogates for him were open that they don't want him to run again. So, of course, that's not true. Of course it's not true. But Politico put out an article framing it as if it is true. So let me read this for you. Here's Politico's little hit job. Bernie Sanders has a problem as he decides whether to run in 2020. Many of his former staffers are looking elsewhere. With the Vermont senator kicking off a 9-state tour on Friday with stops in Iowa, South Carolina, Nevada, and California, a sizable contingent of the people who helped build this insurgent 2016 campaign is ambivalent about a second run, according to interviews with more than a dozen former staffers. Many of them are looking for a different progressive champion to finish what Sanders started. Okay, they say they interviewed 12 former staffers. We don't know if these staffers, picked up his laundry or go to get him coffee, but let's keep reading. Sanders should just declare victory, they said, content in the knowledge that much of his 2016 platform has been adopted by other ambitious Democrats considering the White House bids. Plus, he's a white man who would turn 80 in his first year as president, who'd be trying to lead a diverse party fueled by the energy of young voters, women, and people of color. Quote, I think that if a younger candidate can pick up the mantle and have Bernie's support, I think that would be a better option for 2020. I feel like 60 to 70% of former staffers are looking around for another Bernie-esque candidate this time around, even if it is not him, said Daniel DeRizo, a field organizer for Sanders' 2016 campaign, who went on to help run a successful insurgent mayoral campaign in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm going to move away from the story for a second to show you what this actually means. Okay, so no offense to Daniel DeRisa, who was a field organizer for Bernie Sanders, but let me explain to you how this story probably happened. Because I used to work at MSNBC, at Fox. I also worked for digital sites. So Politico itself wants to push the narrative that people on the Bernie train want to jump off. That people were on the 2016 Bernie train, not on the train anymore. So it's their opinion. It's not based on anything other than their opinion and their wishes. So what do? A lot of times, journalists basically give their opinion or frame an issue by going to find other people that they could quote saying what they actually themselves feel. You see what I'm saying? So, for example, when I was writing at therap.com before I joined the Young Turks, if I wanted to get a point across, I would have to go find people and get quotes from them to drive that point home. This is journalism these days. You're not allowed to give your opinion, but you can go find hacks to give it themselves. Okay, so this first quote is from a field organizer. No offense to this guy, who I'm sure is super nice, and Daniel DeRisa, field organizer for Sanders' campaign. That's not exactly like a high-up person in Bernie Sanders' campaign. That's not exactly like the campaign manager, or the press secretary, or the campaign strategist, or campaign advisors, or people that actually like made key decisions for the campaign. It's a field organizer. There are lots of those. There are lots of those in campaigns. Some of them are glorified volunteers. So Politico, the first quote out of the gate is from a field organizer. Again, I'm not knocking him. It's great to be a field organizer for a campaign like Bernie Sanders. But it's not somebody high up in the campaign. Or as Politico said, what was their phrasing? Oh, a large contingent of his former staffers. Or what was the phrasing? Blah, 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 blah. Sizable contingent of the people who helped build his insurgent campaign. Again, I'm not trying to minimize a field organizer, but that's not like, that's in the war room for the campaign, that guy wasn't in it. You know what I'm saying? So basically, Politico is trying to give off this ridiculous impression that essentially the people who helped create the movement, helped create Bernie Sanders' exploding campaign, aren't so keen on him running again. So the first person they quote, a field organizer. There were literally hundreds of field organizers. It's not a key position. It's not a state director of a campaign. It's not a national advisor to him. It's not a communications person. It's not a campaign manager. It's a field organizer. But, Politico wants to drive home their point because they are scared of Bernie, and so is the Washington Post, and so is CNN. So let me read a little bit more of this ridiculous piece. In many ways, Sanders is a victim of his own success. His lightning in a bottle 2016 cam helped move his ambitious proposals into the mainstream. Ideas such as Medicare for all, a $15 minimum wage, and debt-free college. The reluctance of former aides to embrace another campaign reflects what's expected to be a sprawling field of Democrats stampeding left, unlike the binary Hillary or Bernie choice during most of the Democratic primary 2 years ago. Still, even Sanders supporters who are skeptical of a 2020 run say it's unclear who, if anyone, could carry the torch. Elizabeth Warren is often discussed, but multiple former Sanders staffers were dubious about her potential campaign after watching her attempt to defuse President Donald Trump's attacks on her past claims. Quote, all of the former staff I've talked to agree Bernie should focus on making sure the nominee is someone who continues what he started, said Keegan Gaudis, Sanders' digital advertising director in 2016 and the CEO of Revolution Messaging, the progressive digital consulting firm that became a home for former Sanders staffers. It's a sure thing that he will be able to influence 2020 from the outside. But if he decides to run, I doubt many former staffers will return unless directly asked to. Either way, he misses capturing energy if he doesn't decide soon. I don't even understand how are they describing this guy as saying he shouldn't run? It makes no sense. Quote, all the former staff I've talked to agree Bernie should focus on making sure the nominee is someone who continues what he started, said Keegan Gautis, Sanders' digital advertising director, in 2016. It's a sure thing that he will be able to influence 2020 from the outside, but if he decides to run, I doubt many former staffers will return unless directly asked to. Either way, he misses capturing energy if he doesn't decide soon. So basically, Politico found somebody that did digital advertising for him that said he can definitely change the narrative and have an impact on the outside, but if he's going to decide to run, he should do it soon. That's not, this guy's not saying he shouldn't run or nobody wants him to run. It's literally, the quotes are literally totally the opposite of what the headline of the story is. And again, as I always tell you, majority of people look at a headline, a picture, maybe a sentence, and move on. And then formations are created in one's mind. We have Politico quotes one field organizer saying kind of he shouldn't run, nobody high up in the campaign, and then they quote a former digital advertising director who didn't say he shouldn't run, basically said he could have a big impact on the outside if he doesn't run, but if he's going to run, he should decide soon. And they're also framing it that not that these people they're quoting are actually in the know about it, but they're just saying like we detect other staffers won't join the campaign. This is the line. Gautis is not alone in detecting that Sanders folks are looking around at other 2020 candidates. Quote, I've had a few people reach out and be like, how do I reach out to Warren, said one former Sanders staffer. Some of the Sanders stalwarts, not just staff but high-profile supporters, aren't necessarily in the bag for 2020. Oh my God. Oh my God. You mean to tell me that people who work in politics, the nature of politics, especially campaign workers, you're constantly having job insecurity. You're jumping from one campaign to the next, and in between, you often are without work. You mean to tell me that former Bernie Sanders workers are asking, how do I get on Elizabeth Warren's campaign? Because, shocker, Elizabeth Warren basically announced she's running for president? What does that even mean? That doesn't mean that they don't want Bernie to run. That means they want work. And Elizabeth Warren is clearly running. Am I missing something, folks? Am I reading this wrong? Please tell me. Because the way I read it is they're finding people that weren't high up on the campaign to say he shouldn't run. They're finding people who were sort of high up in the campaign who are not saying he shouldn't run. And they're basically projecting that these people think other people in the campaign don't want him to run. It's insane. It's totally dishonest. It's not journalism. It's basically Politico wants to push a narrative, and they're doing it in a very not subtle way. They are doing it in a very not subtle way. So, I lost respect when she attacked Bernie. I have heard a lot of that. So, let me read you the rest to show you. They even say Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is deserting Bernie. Included in that group is fellow Democratic Socialist and congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was an organizer for Sanders in 2016. Sanders, however, did not endorse her successful primary challenge to powerful Congressman Joe Crowley. Quote, she'll see what the field looks like, said Corbin Trent, Ocasio-Cortez's communications director. She's focused on 2018. Bernie's focused on 2018. We're all focused on 2018. Wait a minute. So you're telling me that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is saying, I'm focused on 2018. We'll see what the field looks like. So she's not endorsing a candidate who hasn't announced that he's running? It's unbelievable. They're trying to frame it that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has soured on Bernie. She's just saying, I can't comment because I don't know. We don't even have candidates yet. Like, that's generally what politicians would say. It's crazy. We'll see what the field says. Meaning, I don't know if Bernie's running. I don't know if Bernie's running. Politicians, even progressive ones, generally calculate things before they say them. If she came out right now and said, yes, I endorse Bernie and think he should run, well, what if he doesn't run? Then it's more difficult for her to move over to somebody else. It's like Paul says, it's complete gibberish full of assumptions. But they frame it as, Bernie's army is deserting him. Bernie's army is deserting him. So, the last piece of this stupid, ridiculous puzzle, enough fervent supporters from the 2016 campaign's top officials to field organizers are wary of a 2020 run that it could be difficult to reignite the 2016 movement. Jeff Weaver, who managed the 2016 race, has been talking about the idea of a draft Bernie pack of sorts after the midterms. But many supporters have been non-committal, according to two people with knowledge of the discussions. Oh, so two people told you people aren't committal on a draft Bernie pack. So that means his fervent supporters don't want him to run. Weaver dismissed the notion that enthusiasm for a Sanders sequel has waned. Quote, I've spoken with a number of people who are interested in a draft Bernie movement, Weaver said. My email is full and my voicemail is full of former Bernie staffers who are eager to come back should he run. So, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. The highest level campaign worker, his campaign manager, you did get on the record. And what did the campaign manager say? Thank you, Gabriel, for 100 SEK from Sweden. I don't know what that translates into dollars, but I love my Swedish friends and viewers. Thank you. He says, sending some love from Sweden, Bernie Sanders 2020. So, Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, like the highest level person, is basically saying, I can't even get through my voicemails. They're full with people asking me and wanting to jump back on board for Bernie. Yet, the headline of this article says, Bernie 2016 alum are wary of a 2020 sequel. Yet, there are several quotes in this abomination of a piece that directly contradict the headline. No wonder independent media is thriving in America. It's just ridiculous. So, also, there's another element to this. You know what? Even if Politico is right, let's say Politico is right, which they're not. I just detailed why it's a total frame job. They basically are just pushing their opinion and their wishes and finding some low-level people to kind of agree with them, and then finding other people they think are helping them make the point, but are actually saying, let's see who actually ends up running. Oh, scandalous. But even if Politico's story was right, who gives a fuck? And now you really have to fund me because I just lost my monetization. I'm not going to stop cursing because YouTube's going to demonetize me. Fuck. How about that? I'm going to tell the truth, and sometimes the truth requires 4 letters. How about that? YouTube. Or shall I say, FewTube, because it's for the few. So, even if this Political article was right, who gives a damn if Bernie's former campaign staffers don't want him to run again? Who cares? What poll is more important? A poll of YouTube. Hey, I'll take it. What poll is more important? A poll of his former campaign advisors or the poll that says he's the most popular American politician in the United States? Which one generally has more of an effect at the voter box? The American people, especially independents, which are the key to winning an election? The American people, or his field organizers that worked on his campaign? American people, field organizers. Field organizers, American people. I'm going to go with the American people. Captain Obvious says, yeah, but he won't run third party. Just watch. He doesn't want to be blamed like Nader was. Thus, he'll never run third party. Thus, he won't be running. Captain Obvious, I think you are incorrect. I think a lot of it will depend on the midterms, and I think a lot of it will depend on the Democratic Party. And if the Democratic Party doesn't match its progressive platitudes with actions, I think you actually might see Bernie run as a third party. I really do. He's getting up there in age. He's got nothing to lose. He probably doesn't, if he doesn't run again, he's probably not going to want to be in the Senate for another decade. He is getting up there in age. And I don't think he's worried about Ralph Nader because he would get a lot more votes than Ralph Nader. And running as an independent, he could get around a rigged primary from the DNC. There's also negatives to running as an independent, but I don't think it's such a slam dunk that he wouldn't run as an independent. Weaver said Bernie hasn't ruled it out. And this is a smart man. He's a progressive man. He's also smart. He learned some lessons from 2016. And sources that I have, not recent conversations, but sources that I have that are in his world have said he's trying to work with the Democratic Party and see if they could be pushed left. But if they don't follow up with actions, not just speeches, and not just signing on to his bills, but if they don't walk the walk, he is not beyond going a different route. But the reason I'm starting the live stream with this story is because this is a rerun of 2016. It's only worse. Honestly, you have 2 or 3 negative stories between Politico, the Washington Post, or the New York Times a week. And you know what? If there's a negative story that's based on facts about Bernie Sanders, okay, so be it. Then we'd address it. I would address it. But when there's these negative stories that are based on distortions, based on false framing, based on lies, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez abandoning Bernie because she says, let's wait to see who runs, and I'm thinking about 2018, not 2020. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable, if you ask me.